She had 7 seconds before the pen touched the paper, and a man she did not know died for a signature he did not understand. Maya Brooks stood 3 feet behind the wine column with a tray of untouched champagne flutes balanced on her left palm, and she could see what no one else in the room could see. The contract on the table was 47 pages. The signature line on the final page was highlighted in soft gold, and the addendum tucked beneath page 41, the one the lawyer had folded under the others while pretending to align them, would transfer 92% of Dohan Industries to a shell company in Macau within 90 days of execution. She had read it twice while clearing the dessert plates. Her hands had not shaken once. The man holding the pen was Sunu Han. Even the air in the Velvet Lotus seemed to bend around him, the way water bends around a stone. He had not looked up from the document in 11 minutes. The Mont Blanc fountain pen was already uncapped, and the gold nib caught the chandelier light like a small, deliberate weapon. His 3 lieutenants stood behind him with their hands folded in front of their belts. The lawyer across the table, Korean, mid-50s, wearing a watch that cost more than Maya's apartment building, wet his lips with the tip of his tongue and tried very hard not to look at the addendum. Maya's heart kicked once against her ribs and went still. She was not supposed to be here. She was supposed to be in the kitchen, rolling silverware into linen napkins. She was supposed to be invisible. Black uniform, black flats, black hair, pulled into a knot so tight it pulled at her temples. She had mastered invisibility the way other women mastered eyeliner. 3 years at the Velvet Lotus, and not one customer had ever asked her name. Not one. That was the deal. That was the entire deal. The pen lowered. The gold nib touched the page. "Don't sign that, sir." The words came out of her mouth before her mind caught up to her tongue. They were not loud. They were not even particularly clear. But they cut through the room like a thrown knife. Because no one spoke to Sunu Han before he had finished reading. The lieutenant on the left moved first. His hand went to the inside of his jacket. The lawyer's face drained of color so fast Maya watched it happen in real time, the way wine drains from a glass when it is knocked over. The second lieutenant turned his shoulders to put himself between her and his boss. Sunu Han did not move. He went still in a way that was somehow louder than movement. The pen hovered a 1/4 inch above the page. His eyes, and this was the part Maya would remember for the rest of her life, his eyes lifted from the contract and found her, and the room did not exist anymore. "Repeat that," he said. His voice was quiet. The accent was clean, American-trained, but the cadence underneath was something older. "This time, look at me." She looked at him. "Page 41, she said. Underneath, the lawyer folded it under when he was straightening the stack. "It's an addendum. It moves your manufacturing arm into a shell. 90 days. The lawyer made a sound like a cough that wanted to be a word. Sunu Han's eyes did not leave Maya's face. He extended his left hand without looking. The lieutenant nearest the table placed page 41 into his palm. Sunu Han read it once. His expression did not change. He read it twice. He turned the page over. He read the back. Then he took the entire contract in both hands, 47 pages of gold leaf binding and notarized seals, and a year of his lawyer's careful, patient corruption, and he tore it cleanly down the middle. The sound was almost gentle. Paper does not scream when it dies. It sighs. He set the 2 halves on the table in a neat stack, capped the Mont Blanc, slid it into the inside pocket of a suit that probably cost more than Maya would make in 3 years, and looked at her for the first time as a person and not as a voice. "You," he said, "are not a waitress. Welcome back, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers. Before we go any deeper into the dangerous waters of Maya Brooks and Sunu Han, Hit that subscribe button, tap the like, and drop your city in the comments so I can see how far our little dark romance family is reaching tonight. Every like, every comment, every soul who finds their way here helps me keep writing these stories of women the world tried to overlook and the men who finally saw them clearly. Now find your quiet place. Dim the lights. Pour something warm. Because what happens in the next 8 minutes is going to change everything Maya thought she had buried, and everything Sunu Han thought he could not feel. The Velvet Lotus was not a restaurant. It was a fortress disguised as indulgence. 3 floors above the corner of Wacker and Wells, where senators ate Wagyu with men whose surnames did not appear on any tax document filed in the state of Illinois. The lighting was always the same. Warm amber from below, cool white from above. The way a cathedral lights a confession. The booths were upholstered in oxblood leather worn soft by 20 years of deals that had ended marriages and started wars. The bar in the back was carved from a single piece of black walnut, and the bartender, Henry, had been pouring drinks there since before Maya was born. Maya had taken the job because it paid in cash, and the manager did not ask questions. That was the first rule of the Velvet Lotus, and it was the only rule that mattered. You did your job. You did not see what you saw. You did not hear what you heard. And at the end of the night, you walked home with $180 in 20s folded inside a sock, and you did not think about what those 20s had paid for. She had been very, very good at the rules. Until tonight. Now she was standing in a private dining room, with her tray still balanced on her left palm. The champagne flutes had not even rattled, and Sunu Han was looking at her with the kind of attention that men like him gave to things they were deciding whether to keep or to remove. His lieutenants had not moved. The lawyer, Mr. Choi, had begun to sweat through the silk lining of his suit. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the November sleet was turning Chicago into a city of black mirrors. "Sit down," Sunu Han said. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. The chair across from him pulled itself out, dragged by a lieutenant Maya had not seen move. The tray came off her palm and disappeared. Someone, she did not see who, pressed a glass of water into her hand. She sat. He studied her the way other men studied portfolios. Not as a man studies a woman. As a man studies a problem he had not been warned was in the room. His eyes were dark, Korean dark, the kind of black that has a different temperature than American black, and there was a thin scar running from the edge of his left eyebrow to the corner of his temple. Pale against skin that had clearly never seen Chicago's sun, his jaw was the kind that had been on the receiving end of fists and had not given any back without paying first. He was 34, maybe 36. He looked exactly his age, and he looked exactly like a man who had decided long ago that aging was a privilege he might not earn. "Your name." "Maya Brooks." "Your real name." She held his eyes. "Maya Brooks." A flicker of something moved across his face. Not a smile. Sunu Han did not smile. Something closer to recognition. "How long have you worked in this room?" 3 years and 4 months. "How many of those contracts have you read?" She had not expected him to ask that directly. She had not expected him to ask anything directly. Most men of his kind would have ordered her removed by now, or worse. She tilted her head a quarter inch, the smallest tell, and answered, "All of them." The lieutenant on the left made a sound through his nose that might have been a laugh if laughs were a thing his face was permitted to do. Sunu Han's eyes did not leave hers. "All of them," he repeated. "Yes, and you have never said anything." "No. Why tonight?" This was the question. This was the only question. She had asked it of herself in the half-second between seeing the addendum and opening her mouth, and she had not had time to find an answer, so she had said the words anyway and worried about the reason afterward. Now she had to give him a reason. Now she had to explain why a black waitress in a $26 polyester uniform had broken 3 years of her own ironclad rule to save a Korean syndicate boss from a contract that would have, eventually, killed him. She set the water glass down very carefully on the white linen. "Because Mr. Choi has been lying to you for 9 months," she said. "Not just tonight. Last March, when he brought you the Pyeongtaek port papers, he switched 2 clauses while you were taking a call. In June, when he gave you the warehouse insurance bundle, there was a kickback line item buried in the 3rd subsection. And tonight he was going to take your whole manufacturing arm because he thinks you do not read past the executive summary. And most nights, sir, you don't. Silence. The kind of silence that has weight. The kind of silence that sits on a chest." Mr. Choi made his break. He moved fast for a man of his age, a half-step toward the door, his hand inside his jacket reaching for either a weapon or a phone, and Sunu-han said one word in Korean, short, flat, almost bored, and both lieutenants moved at the same time. Mr. Choi did not make it to the door. He did not make it 3 feet. He was on his knees on the carpet, and his arms were behind his back, and his face was against the oxblood leather of the booth before Maya had finished exhaling. Sunu-han had not turned to watch. "Take him to the cellar," he said in English, still looking at Maya. "He stays alive until I have spoken to her." The lieutenants vanished. Mr. Choi vanished. The room emptied of everyone except Sunu-han and Maya, and the torn contract, and the November sleet against the windows, and the soft amber light that the Velvet Lotus had been using to soften terrible things for 20 years. He leaned forward. He folded his hands. The dragon tattoo on the side of his neck caught the candlelight, and seemed for a single impossible second to move. "Maya Brooks," he said, "I am going to ask you one question. You are going to answer it truthfully. If you do, you walk out of this building tonight with more money than you have ever held, and I will never see your face again. And if I lie, you will not lie." He was right. She was not going to lie. Not because she was afraid of him. She was, but fear had stopped being a useful variable in her life 4 years ago, but because there was no version of this ending that involved her keeping the secret she had carried into this room. She had broken the rule already. The rest was just paperwork. "Ask," she said. "Who taught you to read a Korean shell company addendum at 120 words per minute?" She closed her eyes for 1 heartbeat. When she opened them, the woman behind them was not the waitress. "My father," she said. "Master Sergeant Daniel Brooks. United States Army. 8th Army, Yongsan Garrison, Seoul. He was a counterintelligence linguist for 19 years. He raised me in Korea from when I was 4 to when I was 16. I read, write, and speak Korean better than I speak English when I am tired. I was 3 semesters from a JD in international contract law at the University of Chicago when he died of a stroke and my mother's medical bills swallowed the rest. I sold my books. I took this job because the manager paid in cash and did not ask questions. I have read every contract in this room because that was the only piece of my old life I could still afford to practice. That is the answer. That is all of it. The silence this time was different. It was the silence of a man hearing the exact shape of something he had not known he was looking for. Sunu-han sat very still. His hands stayed folded. The candle between them guttered once and recovered. Outside, the sleet had turned to rain. He said, "In Korean, did your father ever tell you what your name means?" She answered in Korean, "Water that finds the crack." Something behind his eyes moved. I am not letting you leave this building tonight, he said, still in Korean. Not because you are not free. Because Mr. Choi has 3 brothers, and they will know within the hour that he did not come home. They will come for the witness. That is you. So, you have 2 choices, Miss Brooks. You can take the money I offered you and run, and we will see whether you are faster than 3 Korean assassins who have been doing this longer than you have been alive, or you can stay under my protection until I have ended every man who learns your name tonight. Which is your preference? She did not answer immediately. She thought about her mother's grave at Oakwood, the one she still owed $1,400 on. She thought about the rent due in 11 days. She thought about the law school books in a cardboard box under her bed that she had not been able to throw away. She thought about her father, who had taught her to read a room before she could read a clock, and who had said to her once, when she was 14, the trick to surviving men with power is to make yourself useful to one of them faster than the others can make you disappear. I'll stay, she said. He inclined his head. Just once. A fraction of an inch. Then you should know, he said, that the men who work for me are going to find out within the next 20 minutes that I have placed a civilian woman under the protection of the Han Syndicate. They are going to assume things about you that are not true. I cannot stop them from assuming. I can only stop them from acting. Do you understand what I am telling you? Yes. You will live in my house. You will eat at my table. You will not leave without 2 of my men beside you. None of this is romantic, Miss Brooks. None of this is a choice you should be flattered by. This is a logistical reality of a problem you created when you opened your mouth. I understand. Good, he stood. He buttoned his suit jacket with one hand. The motion was so practiced it was beautiful, and Maya, who had spent 3 years training herself not to notice anything about any of the men in this room, noticed it anyway, and hated herself for noticing. One more question, he said. Why did you save me? She had not expected that one either. She looked up at him. The amber light caught the side of his face, and for 1/2 second he did not look like a syndicate boss. He looked like a tired man in a beautiful suit who had not been touched by a woman who was not afraid of him in a very long time. Because Mr. Choi looked at you, she said, the way men look at things they have already decided to bury. And I have been buried before. I know that look, and I wasn't going to watch it happen to someone else in this room tonight if I could stop it with a sentence. He did not say anything for a long time. Then he said, "Get your coat, Miss Brooks." His house was not a house. It was a building, 22 floors above the Chicago River, the entire top floor and the 3 below it, with elevators that required a thumbprint and a passcode and a retinal scan in that order. The lieutenant who rode up with her, his name was Jin Ho, she learned later, and he was the one who had laughed through his nose, did not speak to her in the elevator. He did not look at her. He stood with his hands folded in front of him and his eyes on the elevator door. And when the door opened, he stepped out first and held it for her, without making it a gesture. The penthouse smelled like cedar and old paper, and something warmer underneath. There was a fire already lit in a stone hearth that was taller than she was. The windows showed Chicago in rain, all the way to the lake, lights smeared into long gold streaks. There was a Steinway in the corner. There was a wall of books in Korean and English, and one shelf in what she thought might be Russian. There were no photographs of any human being anywhere in the room. A woman appeared, older, maybe 60, Korean, in a charcoal cardigan that had probably cost $600 and was being worn like a bathrobe. She introduced herself in Korean as Mrs. Park. She told Maya, also in Korean, that there was a room ready for her down the hallway on the left. that there were clothes in the closet that should fit, that there was a bath drawn, and that dinner would be in 40 minutes if Maya wanted to eat, or not, depending on her stomach. Maya thanked her in Korean. Mrs. Park's eyebrows lifted 1/2 inch and then did not move again. "He said you would speak it," Mrs. Park said. "He did not say you would speak it well." "Welcome, Miss Brooks." Maya bathed. She put on a sweater and soft pants that fit her exactly, which meant someone had taken her measurements from her work uniform in the 45 minutes since she had left the Velvet Lotus, which meant she should be terrified, and was, distantly. But the terror was being held at arm's length by something else she did not yet have a name for. She went to dinner. He was at the table already, reading a document. Glasses on. His suit jacket gone, his sleeves rolled twice, the dragon tattoo visible now where his collar opened. And the tattoo was not just a dragon, she saw, but a dragon with something written along its spine in Old Korean. Characters she would have to look at twice to read. He did not look up when she came in. He gestured to the chair across from him. Without looking, she sat. Mrs. Park brought soup. The soup was the kind her father had made on Sundays, the kind Maya had not eaten in 11 years, and Maya's eyes did something unforgivable for a half-second before she got them back under control. Sunuhan looked up. He saw it. He did not comment on it. He went back to his document. 2 minutes later, without looking up, he said, "My mother used to make that soup. The cook learned it from her. If it is not right, tell me. She will not be insulted. She will be furious, but she will not be insulted." "It is right," Maya said. He turned a page. "Tomorrow," he said, "I am going to ask you to look at every contract Mr. Choi has touched in the last 3 years. There are 41 of them. I am going to pay you the equivalent of 2 years of your old salary for 1 week of your time. You are going to find every place he lied to me. When you have found them, I am going to deal with the people he lied to me on behalf of. After that, you are going to be free to walk out of this building with the money and the protection of my name for the rest of your life, which means no one will touch you, ever, for any reason, because of who you walked beside for 1 week. Do you accept these terms?" "Yes, good." He turned another page. "And after that," he said, still not looking up, "if you want to finish your law degree, I have a man at the University of Chicago who owes me a favor that he has been waiting 9 years to repay. I will use it on you. You will not owe me for it. You will owe him, and he will be grateful for the chance to clear his debt. That is not part of the deal. That is something I am telling you because your father raised you in my country, and he was a good soldier, and you should not be carrying his death this long." Maya did not answer. She could not answer. She picked up her spoon, and her hand was steady, and she ate her mother's soup that was not her mother's soup. And across the table, the most dangerous man in 3 states read his document and did not look at her. And somewhere far below them, the November rain kept turning the city into mirrors. She did not know yet that within 72 hours, 2 of Mr. Choi's brothers would die in a parking garage in Skokie, and the third would disappear into the Indiana cornfields without a sound. She did not know yet that on the 4th day, Sunuhan would walk her through a contract with a Russian arms supplier, and she would catch a buried indemnity clause that would have cost him $11 million and his Vladivostok port access, and that he would look at her across the desk afterward with an expression she had only ever seen on her father's face once, the day she had passed her Korean fluency exam at 12. The look of a man who was watching a young woman become exactly what he had hoped she might become. She did not know yet that on the 6th night, when she could not sleep because the rain had stopped and the silence was too loud, she would walk to the kitchen and find him already there, with 2 cups of barley tea poured, as if he had heard her get out of bed, as if he had been waiting. She did not know yet that on the 7th night, the night the contract review ended and she was supposed to leave, he would stand in the doorway of her room with his suit jacket over one arm and say, "I told you none of this was a choice you should be flattered by. I was wrong. Stay if you want to. Go if you want to. But I would like it on the record that I have asked." She did not know any of that yet. Tonight she only knew that the soup was right, and that a man who tore contracts in half had just offered her back the version of her life she had stopped letting herself imagine. And that somewhere in the next room a fire was burning down to embers, and that her name in Korean meant water that finds the crack, and that for the first time in 11 years she was sitting at a table where someone had set a place for her. Across the river, the Velvet Lotus was still serving wine to senators who would never know how close they had come tonight to dining in a room where a war started. The bartender Henry was wiping down the black walnut bar. The booths held their secrets. The amber light kept doing its quiet work. And on the 22nd floor of a building above the river, a Korean syndicate boss who had not slept through a full night in 6 years turned another page of his document, and the woman across from him finished her soup, and neither of them said anything for a long time, because the silence between them had stopped being empty. It had started being a room they were both standing in. He didn't ask her to stay. He didn't have to. Some doors, once you walk through them, don't close behind you. They just keep opening into rooms you didn't know you were allowed to enter. If this story found you tonight, my fierce hearts and midnight dreamers, you know what to do. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Drop a comment and tell me your city. I want to see how far Maya's story has traveled while you've been listening. And if you felt that last scene in your chest the way I felt it writing it, leave a single word in the comments. Stay. I'll be reading every one. Next week, we open a new door. A nurse on the night shift at Northwestern Memorial recognizes the gunshot wound on her Trauma Bay patient as the exact same caliber that killed her brother 3 years ago. And the patient on her table is the only man in Chicago who knows who pulled the trigger. You don't want to miss what she does next. Stay dangerous. Stay seen.